I have a 3-pronged platform for running for the school board. You need to have a fiscal responsibility in the budget so that you can hire teachers and retain teachers and staff so that student outcomes are positive.
Educate, inform, inspire. The Dan Parsons Show, a podcast that lifts up instead of tearing down.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the Dan Parsons Show. I'm your host, Dan Parsons. Coming up on today's show, Cheryl Meyer-Thompson, who is running for the Lincoln Public School Board. But before I introduce Cheryl, a reminder that you can ask a question to one of our guests. Just go to the danparsonsshow.com and become a friend of Dan on Patreon, and we'll choose one of your questions to ask. Okay, here's my interview with LPS board candidate Cheryl Meyer-Thompson. Enjoy.
The people decide. The voices impacting Lincoln. This is Election Coverage 2025 on The Dan Parsons Show.
Well, we are focusing on Lincoln City elections this spring, including the races for Lincoln Board of Education. There are 4 district seats on the Lincoln Board of Education up for election this spring. And it's my pleasure to introduce one of those candidates, Cheryl Meyer-Thompson. Cheryl, welcome to the Dan Parsons Show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure and an honor.
Yeah, well, it's my honor. Cheryl is running to represent the Southwest District 7 on the Lincoln Board of Education. And so, Cheryl, our producers have come up with a set of 4 questions in order to get to know our guests a little better. And then you get to fire one back at me. Okay. So we call it Dan's 4 and you're 1.
Sounds great.
All right. Question number 1. Where did you grow up?
Well, I grew up on a farm in northeast Nebraska between Wakefield and Wayne. And it was a great place to live, to grow up, but I didn't like dirt. So whenever there were many tasks and you all pitched in at whatever happened. And so if I ever got that whiny kind of attitude or that look on my face, my dad would say, nope, no whining. If you want a college education to get off this farm, you're not going to whine. So there was no whining on the farm. It was a great place to live.
I bet it was. Yeah, I've been up in that community a few times. I'm familiar with it. So yeah, great place to grow up. Okay, question number 2. As a kid, what was your dream job?
Well, I always wanted to be a teacher. My parents were busy. My dad farmed, and then he owned a business in town, a grain elevator. And my mom was involved in church and school activities. So I was at my grandparents quite a bit. But back then, your grandparents lived close. So one set of grandparents lived 1 block from the elementary school. And then the other grandparents lived about 20 miles away. But one grandparent was a 1-room school teacher in Wayne County. And she loved books. And so reading and that type of thing was always very fun to do with her. And the other grandmother was a fantastic cook, baker. And if you brought her a picture of some type of outfit that you wanted, she had the mannequin. She could make it onto that mannequin. She could use knives. She was fantastic. So we were some of the best dressed little girls around town. So that's how I wanted to be a teacher, but I didn't really know what type of teacher until I went to the University of Nebraska. Yeah. And then I took a special ed class, and I also took some family and consumer science classes. I think I took a nutrition class the first semester and a human development class. And so I kind of figured out that I was going to be a family and consumer science teacher.
Yeah. What a great path. That's good. Yeah. Okay. Question number 3, and answer this any way you like. Okay. The most famous person you've ever met.
Well, I was very fortunate. I was on a national consultant team for FCCLA, which is the Student Career and Technical Organization for Family and Consumer Science. So I was on this national consultant team. There were 4 of us in the nation, and we would go and train teachers. Well, it was back in 89. And what happened was they were celebrating the 45th anniversary. Then it was called FHA, and we got it changed in 99. But anyway, we got invited to this reception where Barbara Bush was. So she was the vice president's wife at the time. And so I remember I was so nervous. I took my clothes on to the plane because I wasn't going to have any, problems. I made sure that I was going to be there and look dressed and appropriate. So that was really kind of cool. So it was at the French embassy. As a result, it was really cool. Where the celebration was, and state advisors and some other, dignitaries, that type of thing were there. But because it was the French embassy and there were students, national officers, and some state presidents, they had to take down the artwork because there were quite a few nudes.
Oh.
So the walls were kind of bare. They told us at the time, the French.
When in Paris, yes,
Yeah,
that's
right.
that's cool.
But it was in 89, so he's probably
Yeah, very cool. Barbara Bush, that had to be quite an honor. That's cool.
Yes, quite the lady.
Yeah. Okay. Last of these questions. What was the first concert you attended?
Well, I grew up on a farm, and we didn't go to a lot of activities. I mean, we went to Nebraska football games because that kind of worked into the farming schedule. Didn't take a lot of vacations, but I didn't go to a concert till I was a first-year teacher. Went to the Beach Boys in Omaha.
Nice.
At
Nice.
Rosenblatt.
Oh, the old Rosenblatt outdoors. Nice.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. Very cool. Okay. You get to ask me one back.
Okay. What's your background? Where did you get started in your career?
Yeah. So, born and raised here in Lincoln. I was, and I've told this story a few times. I'm proud of it. I enjoy talking about it, but I was one of those 10-year-old nerds who was interested in what was going on in the world. So I read the newspaper every day when I was 10 years old. And so what was going on in, the 70s was, as you mentioned, Husker football. And so I'd listen to the Husker football game in the garage with my dad on Saturdays. And I realized, hey, the newspaper gets delivered the next morning, and I get to look at the stats and the pictures and the stories about Husker football. So it didn't take me long to figure out, what's going on the front page of the paper? Well, what was going on the front page of the paper in the 1970s? The Vietnam War, Watergate, Nixon, that scandal. And so that's what got me started, and was interested in current events and what's going on around the country and around the world. So here I am all these years later. I've made a career out of helping people get noticed, either politicians or business leaders in the field of public relations. So so that's kind of my story.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Oh, okay. We are partnering with two well-known, respected nonprofit organizations here in Nebraska, Civic Nebraska and Flatwater Free Press. Of course, Flatwater Free Press, Nebraska's very first nonprofit newsroom. And they are producing a voter guide for the city election. And they are using our content from these interviews in that voter guide. So I'd like to ask you 3 questions from that voter guide. And it's the same questions I've asked all of the candidates for school board. So question number 1, what is the most pressing issue facing Lincoln Public Schools? And if elected, how would you address it?
Well, I think it's threefold. I have a 3-pronged platform for running for the school board, but you need to have a fiscal responsibility in the budget so that you can hire teachers and retain teachers and staff so that student outcomes are positive. So if you look at that from the backside, it's student outcomes. But if you don't have the teachers and you don't have a budget that is fiscally responsible, you're not going to have everything work together. So student outcomes, in that respect, teachers need to have the resources available to them. The testing is important, the MAP testing. ACT, but also graduation rates. And so in the middle school now, they have an AVID class. My husband and I are legal guardians of our 14-year-old grandson, and he is at Scott Middle School. And some of his friends are taking this AVID class. And so it's advancement via individual determination. So his one friend, Jax, he talks about it quite a bit when they're in the car together, because it's like, I'm teaching again. I'm driving the school van.
All right. Yeah.
I keep my ear open.
You can learn a lot on that little drive to school. Yeah.
And, they give him, and he has another friend that's taking the AVID class. But what we've learned is when I talked to Dr. Sarah Salem at the district office, that at Dawes Middle School, they require it. And so it's just note-taking, studying, interpersonal skills, public speaking, the goal setting, and then college career. What are they going to look like? What's it going to look like? And so it's a great class, and it has actually improved graduation rates, because in the last year or the last 2 years, graduation rates have improved. So continuing to have all those resources for all students, because no matter whether, it's race, religion, economics, it's all important for all students. And to give you an example, our grandson, he came from DHSS. My husband called one night, said, what's your social security number? And I said, okay, here it is. Why? And he said, well, our grandson is coming to live with us because DHSS has taken him out of the home of his mom. Unfortunately, that was not a good situation. But he went to Norwood Park in North Lincoln, and it's a Title I school. Fantastic. And then when we got legal guardianship, it was just easier. I was still teaching. He went to Ruth Hill. But, there's all types of things that are available for students and for them to be successful. So if a school is having low test scores, there's a school improvement program in place in each building. The principals work with the teachers to figure out what resources they need. They have their own budgets. And I know, like at Norwood Park, they had a school psychologist, which was, for our grandson was great, because he was trying to figure things out.
Sure.
His family situation was different, but then there were other kids. And so each principal has the resources and also works with their staff if they need to do some school improvement. And the strategic planning of the 5-year plan of LPS includes parts of those things.
Very good. Very good. Question number 2. Concerns about school safety and student mental health continue to take center stage nationally. How will you ensure Lincoln schools remain safe and welcoming for all students?
It's very important. The students and parents are always informed, especially the parents should get a newsletter each week from the school principal. It gives you guidelines on how to report if you have concerns. So those are in place for parents. Students also know that. We had a situation when Dean was littler. He's a little guy, and there was some bullying. And, we got it taken care of. It was wonderful. And parents need to be responsible too. So if they see something or they're concerned, talk to those principals. The principals are open to listening, and they will, research and find out what's going on. But the safety drills are always important. We get reports from the principal on when different types of safety drills have been conducted, how they went. We get a heads up before the safety drill, so we know that that's happening. So those portions of safety are already in place. Middle school and high school have the resource officers available. They're always around. You see them. I go to Scott Middle School, and they're around. Their car's there, or they're in the building. So I think that that's important. and it will continue. I support those current policies. I would make sure that, cyber security is followed through. We're always on constant alert for that. And in elementary, comfort dogs. They had a beautiful comfort dog at Ruth Hill. So, that helps with the mental part of students' well-being. They want to have a sense of belonging. So even like at Ruth Hill, they had T-shirts. Who would have thought a T-shirt? But just having that T-shirt, that sense of pride is really important with kids. And now I know I'm buying quite a few different types of T-shirts and sweatshirts in middle school, and we've already started the high school because he'll be at Southwest next year. But for high school and middle school students, extracurricular activities are extremely important. Being a high school teacher, FCCLA sponsor, and then eventually I taught ProStart, which is a college culinary class through the National Restaurant Association.
Nice.
That teamwork. I had kids that really weren't sports oriented, or they weren't in the leadership type of organizations or speech or drama or music. But once they got into that kitchen and they learned, we made a 3-course meal in an hour on 2 butane burners. It was great because they had that sense of teamwork. And that's what's really important, that they have that sense of belonging. And that makes the child successful. And one other example, I work part-time. I've always had a passion for clothes and fashion. I work at Talbot's, but one of my coworkers is an immigrant. They've been here for 13 years, but her daughter now got onto the Southwest dance team. And I said, oh, that is so great. And she said, well, my daughter knows that she has to have some extracurricular activities to have on her resume because she wants to go to college. So just having those opportunities, I mean, there's ways to help students like that get uniforms if they need to, through the foundation, different organizations will give donations too. So the sense of belonging and having those students feel like they belong to the school is important, or the building.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good. Okay, question number 3. President Trump has signed an executive order calling for the dismantling of the U.S. Education Department, advancing his campaign promise to eliminate that agency. The order instructed the Secretary of Education to return authority over education to the states. So my question, what impact will this have on local school districts in Nebraska? And do you agree with that order?
Well, there's really, you can't agree or disagree. It's happening. And to give you a little background, yesterday, Brian Maher, who's the commissioner of the State Education Board, or the State of Nebraska Education, he did sign, it was in the paper. Let's see, what did he say? He certified that Nebraska does not use diversity inclusion programs. And then I read through the article, and Dr. Spreda also had signed it to make sure that those funds are still coming through to the state, and then it is given to the local school boards. Back in probably the early 90s, we had multicultural education. All teachers were required to take courses in that. So we always, in Lincoln Public Schools, it's equal opportunities for all students. And there is equity for all students to participate. The federal funds coming through the state has been the process. LPS has several grants. I mean, they just have multiple grants. Just to give you some information, they do have 42,000 students. But with federal grants through special ed, they receive $10.7 million. But that's through grants and funding. So total LPS gets through the state of Nebraska from the feds $56 million in federal grants. The general fund receives $4 million, and from the feds, that $4 million goes into the general fund, which makes up about 1% of the total budget. But what's important to know is Tuesday, my husband and I went to the Chamber of Commerce lunch with Senator Ricketts, and my husband owns a couple businesses in town. And he assured everybody that if you had problems with grants and the funding, to contact his office. And before he spoke, I was able to visit with Dr. Scretta and another school board member, and they had also talked to him. And he said, my office will make sure that you get your funds and your grants. So it's not only just dollars, but it's the grant and the that funding. And it doesn't all come from the Department of Education. Some of it comes through the Department of Justice. And from what I understand, some of those things are getting moved to different departments from the Department of Education. So the administration needs to kind of know where things are going, and they're on top of it. But, USDA, the Department of Agriculture, also gives us money too for schools. So it is very concerning. It's changing day to day. We're all kind of, standing on some shaky ground. But again, Dr. Maher said in his statement a couple weeks ago, do not panic. Okay.
That's good advice.
Yes. And I knew him inadvertently because he first started his administration career at Centennial High School, and I was at Milford. So we were in the same conference about 15 miles away from each other, Seward County. Yeah. So yeah, it's concerning. We don't know, none of us know what's going to happen exactly.
Yeah. A bonus question that relates, and maybe you kind of answered this, but in your last answer here, but so this is a question from friend of Dan, Gary, who's a member of our show through Patreon, that relates to the previous question. And Gary's question is, the Trump administration has proposed eliminating the U.S. Department of Education. How do you intend to ensure the continued funding for special education programs in the district should those funds be eliminated?
And that's concerning also. Special ed as I said, from the feds receives $10.7 million. I do know I was able to attend a Nebraska State Education Meet Your Senator dinner. And I talked with Senator Myron Dorn, who is my state senator. And the state has put more money into special ed because at one time I don't know if there was less federal funding. And so they wanted to make sure that the state was giving a good proportion. Now, when I asked him about some bills that were available for special ed teachers to have maybe 2 days to do paperwork, because they do have a lot of paperwork, then, the state legislature is having some problems trying to get the balance in the budget for a 2-year budget. So, writing other grants through different agencies may have to be, we don't want to hear anything about increased taxes. People don't like that. Any of us don't like taxes, regardless of what it is. But they may have to go through some other community type of grants. But, it's very, very important to give that special education opportunities. And again, then there's also special education, but then there's gifted. So there's a lot of different moving parts. But I would say that they'd have to go look for some other funds, and grant writers know where to look for the funds, different foundations, not only in the state, but in the nation.
Yeah. Very good. Okay. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about that I haven't asked you about, Cheryl?
I have a question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
So if you had hypothetically 2 very qualified candidates for a school board in a district, what would be the qualities that you would look for when you cast your vote?
Oh my. Well, A, I'm going to cast a vote.
Sure.
B, you're not in my district, so or I'm not in your district, so I can't answer that from from that perspective. But yeah, I mean, I think certainly I encourage our audience, which I think all of us should do, our homework. And I was disappointed about the voter turnout in the primary election a few weeks ago here in Lincoln. 20% of the qualified eligible voters decided it was important enough to get out and vote. So I guess I'm just of the opinion that people need to really be informed, and it doesn't take that much. I mean, resources like this show, the voter guide that we talked about. So I just encourage everyone to, and it doesn't take a lot of your time to educate yourselves. And the other question that I've encouraged, or I've been asked, and I've encouraged other people because I've been involved in campaigns in my career. I don't have a dog in this hunt. I'm not representing anyone in this election cycle, but and that is for candidates, it's kind of, we call it in the business retail politics. It's what you're doing. You're talking to people. I assume you're talking people door to door. I assume you're going to forums. You're talking to people and helping understand what the issues are and meeting people where they live and understanding. So I just think from the voters' perspective, it's our responsibility to do the research and make the best choices we can make. And I think it's the candidates' responsibility to make themselves available to answer those questions and interact and find out from the public what is important to them. So anyway, I don't know if I answered your question, but that's...
No, you need to be informed and educated and get all the facts. And so, my husband being in business has a different perspective, which I love. That's always good to get that feedback from somebody else that's not in education, because there's a lot in my family. There are a lot of educators. And so then, we can have a different perspective and, or farmers, that type of thing. So it's always interesting. But, my husband and I, after I retired from teaching at Milford for 38 years, I drove out there that day for the interview and said, 4 years, I'm out of here. And 38 years. Right. And I lived out there for 6 years, but then I commuted for 32. But then I supervised student teachers at UNL. And so that gives you a different perspective of teachers and how to help those first-year teachers become confident in the classroom to help students. And now that we have our grandson, I'm just having fun. I was a room parent for 3 years at Ruth Hill and involved in the PTO at Norwood Park and also at Ruth Hill and now at Scott. So it's fun. It's fun doing it. But hair dye does help.
It doesn't hurt. Well, I thank you, Cheryl, for your time. I thank you for running. I know it's not a small deal. How can our audience learn more about you? How can they find out more about you?
Well, I do have a webpage. It's Cheryl for LPS.com. And you'll see more about what I am about, my policies, my platform, where I came from, and some of my experience and leadership skills that I've acquired.
Hey, thanks so much, Cheryl, for joining me on the pod. Best of luck in your race for Lincoln Public School Board. A reminder, if you'd like to learn more about these candidates, check out the voter guides by our friends at Civic Nebraska and Flatwater Free Press. Thanks to our producer, Chase Porter, Penology Tech Solutions for their technical help and equipment, and Kim Remington, Parsons PR's Director of Operations. And most importantly, thanks to each of you for tuning in. It really does mean a great deal to me. Okay, that's today's show. Thanks for tuning in. Now go do good things. I'm Dan Parsons.